All right. Obviously, we've opened Visual Studio, so I've given you a leg up there, buddy. You don't need to know how to open Visual Studio. Isn't that great? So with that being said, obviously, Visual Studio offers many projects. If you only have the Business Intelligence Developer Studio, BIDS, as it's affectionately known, you'll be limited to projects across SQL Server Business Intelligence side of things. Obviously, if you have a fuller version of Visual Studio, you'll have access to things like VB and C#. Now, another thing to make this easier for all of you out there, and certainly for Tom, our victim today, is the whole goal today, hopefully we accomplish this, is we're going to do this without code. So you remember one of those perceptions that I threw up that sometimes is common out there that, well, I don't know MDX, so I can't do this. So our goal today is to also illustrate to you how far we can actually go with this design without actually having to code anything in MDX, with just using the native capabilities that are built into analysis services. So without further ado, first step is we're going to create a Visual Studio project for analysis services. So if you would, Tom, let's do File, New, and Project. Yeah, don't do a website. Okay, just checking there, Tom. And as you see, I have a more full version, the full version of Visual Studio, so you'll see all those other different project types. But under Business Intelligence projects, there on the right-hand side, we have two. Let me just describe what they are so you don't get confused. Analysis Services project is most likely what you're going to use when you're creating a brand new project. But there's one also option here that I'd like to point out to you, and that's Import Analysis Services Database there on the right. That's your lifeline, if you will. So if for whatever reason you have lost a project that has the design bits to your cube, this is a way to reverse engineer a cube that's been deployed on your server into a Visual Studio project. Again, it's your life preserver in case, you know, the consultants, I guess, run off with your code or whatever it may be. So without further ado, let's click that left side one, Analysis Services Project. Excuse me. And in the name, we're going to name that something fun. How about AW? And click OK. At this point, we've created a shell for all the objects that are going to represent that cube. The Solution Explorer on your right is your visual clue for this. Now, what I do like about this is, for the most part, what you'll see here is that in Solution Explorer on that right side, you're generally going to want to walk from the top to the bottom here. And we'll go through that. So obviously we've created the project, and the first thing we've got to deal with is data. So we're going to right-click on Data Sources there, Tom, and do New Data Source. This is going to introduce us to the first of many wizards we're going to encounter. We'll just click Next through this opening page. Oh, that's nice. So I already actually have a data connection there where we're going to be going. And we can reuse this. If you had to, though, Tom, let's go ahead and click New, just so we can demonstrate this. So if I had to click New, it's the standard connection manager you've seen for other things like analysis services projects, where I could pick a server name, what type of logon I'm going to use, and the database specifically that I want to connect to. So we're going to forego this because I already have one listed there, so we'll click Cancel at the very bottom. And we'll choose Next. I'm basically using AdventureWorks DW 2008 today, R2, sorry, 2008 R2. Now you're going to get to the impersonation information. We're not going to go in great details because this is a basic overview of which ones you should select. But know this, there are two distinct things that we're dealing with when we deal with accounts with analysis services. We have, and they're completely separate, we have users using it, and we also have accounts that need to go back to those data sources and get the information to process into the cube. Okay, so for today, we're going to use inherit. Inherit is not a bad option, as it will use the most restrictive secure account that it's capable of using in either scenario. So it keeps us safe here, and it's very easy to use. I usually recommend using inherit when you're starting out, and then later on, as things develop and you get ready for a full enterprise production deployment, you can then tweak the accounts that are used. So we'll click Next at this point. And let's just be consistent. We'll just call this AW. Nothing like leaving people very useful names, right, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyhow, you get the idea. Finish. Now we've got our source there up in the top right. Our next step is to then connect data in a meaningful way. And so we do that through a data source view. So we'll right-click and do New Data Source View. And Next. So immediately the first step, no surprise, it needs a data source. So we've previously defined the one there. If you haven't already done so, you see it does have a new data source button. So if you've clicked this and not followed my suggestion to kind of work top down, that's cool. You can do it here too. But we've got it, so Tom's going to click Next. Now we get a list of tables. Let's make this a little bit bigger, if you don't mind. You can drag that top corner and spread that out a bit. Okay, so this is going to profile every single thing that it finds table and view-wise within that source. Useful, not useful, debatable. But what we're going to do is we're going to show you a couple tricks that we can use this to be productive. Tom, first thing I'm going to do is get you to go down to where you start to see the name Fact, and we're going to locate Fact Reseller Sales. And you can either double-click it or, as he's doing, the mover control in the middle, move it over. Now, what I would suggest to you as you're building projects from the beginning, don't sit here and move everything over at one time. It's a lot to keep up with all the changes that you'll see that we're going to go through. It's much easier to bring what we call subject areas over one at a time. Subject areas are normally defined as one fact table and the appropriate related dimensions that give it meaning. For those not familiar with that terminology, a fact table is nothing more than a bucket of measures that we're interested in analyzing, or the business is used to analyzing. They're usually numeric, additive, those type of things. The dimensions that we're going to surround that with are things that give meaning or context to those particular measurements. They're the group bys, the filters, the row headers and column headers that you'll see that give the context to the numbers that people want to analyze. So the next step is I purposefully added the fact table first, and that's a good design choice because if you see at the bottom of that included objects pane on the right side, you'll see add related tables. If you have foreign keys and stuff in the database, this is a cool tool.